Alright guys, get ready to witness some seriously wild reactions. Today we're diving into the world of teenage convicts receiving their sentences, and let me tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. These kids have made some seriously bad decisions and are about to face the consequences. But what makes this video truly jaw-dropping is their insane reactions. From sobbing to screaming, you won't believe how these teens handle their sentences, so grab some popcorn and get ready for a wild ride, because these reactions will definitely give you the chills. Shondell Jackson. Shondell Jackson, who was recently sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the murder of a young university student. Shondell Jackson and his friend were reportedly out hunting for victims when they spotted Nathan Potter leaving a bar. Nathan was a 21-year-old college student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Jackson and his friend stalked Nathan, accosted him, and demanded money. When Jackson learned that Nathan didn't have any cash on him, he shot him, which resulted in his death. After the murder, Jackson fled to Mississippi, but was later arrested with the help of his uncle, who tipped off the police. During the trial, Jackson was seen making gestures towards the victim's family, and when he was escorted out of the courtroom, he was seen smiling at them. Moments before the sentencing, Jackson's mother addressed the court and claimed that she never had any clue that her son was involved in the murder. She stated that when she heard about it on the news, she cried and couldn't imagine what the victim's mother was going through. She also pleaded with the court to not take her son's life away from him, claiming that he was not a monster. However, despite the plea of Jackson's mother, the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Jackson had an outburst in the courtroom, and as the deputies restrained him, one of his family members screamed at the victim's family. Jackson's friend, who acted as the lookout during the murder, pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Derek Romano. Derek Romano, a man who was already serving a 55-year sentence for the slaying of a pizza delivery driver in 2014, but will now spend an additional 17 years behind bars for taking the life of his cellmate. Romano was serving his sentence at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility in Indiana when he requested to become cellmates with Jeremiah Roberts, who was serving a 68-year sentence. The two shared a living space since September 2019 until May 3, 2020, when Roberts was found lifeless in his bunk. According to court documents, Romano told investigators that the two were drinking homemade wine the night before and had an argument over stupid stuff. He then lost control, beating Roberts to death with his hands and feet, causing severe injuries to his head and neck. Blood was found splattered throughout the cell, and Romano had blood and bruising on his feet. After the incident, Romano left notes on the wall of the cell. One of the notes read, "Time of death, 10:30 p.m." And another said, "Pray for the man who died here, for he lived and died a better man than me." In exchange for dismissing a slaying charge, Romano pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter in Roberts' slaying, which means that he acknowledged that he intentionally caused Roberts' death, but did not plan it in advance. Cameron Herron. Cameron Herron, the 18-year-old who was sentenced to 24 years in prison for a deadly hit-and-run accident that occurred in 2018. Cameron Herron was driving a Ford Mustang on Bayshore Boulevard when he hit and killed a mother and her baby. Herron was racing with another man, John Barano, at the time of the accident. Both men were accused of racing, and Barano also pleaded guilty, receiving a 6-year prison sentence. This crime took 2 beautiful lives and left 4 families broken. State Attorney Andrew Warren stated that no sentence can repair the damage or bring back the lives lost. However, they hope that this outcome will deliver some comfort and closure for Jessica and Lilia's families. During the court proceedings, the judge adjudicated Herron guilty on count 1, sentenced him to 9 years in Florida State Prison, and sentenced him to 15 years in Florida State Prison, which will run consecutively to count 1 for a total of 24 years in Florida State Prison. Herron was then taken into custody. Unfortunately, this is not the only case of young drivers causing deadly accidents. Seth Welch. Seth Welch, a religious farming father from Cedar Springs, Michigan. He and his wife, Tatiana Fusari, were charged with the murder of their 10-month-old daughter, Mary Welch. According to reports, the couple claimed that they noticed their baby was underweight and skinny, but did not seek medical attention due to their religious beliefs and distrust of medicine and the government. The tragedy came to light when Seth called 911 after discovering his child's lifeless body. In the call, he told the operator that he had found the child dead and waited an hour and a half before calling 911. He also mentioned that he had called his lawyer first thing to ask what the next step should be. When asked when he had last seen his child, Seth said it was around 3 p.m. the day before and he had put her to bed. The autopsy revealed that Mary's cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration due to neglect by the adult caregivers. The couple was charged with felony murder while in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of child abuse in the first degree. This is a charge called homicide felony murder and carries a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. They were also charged with child abuse in the first degree for knowingly or intentionally causing serious physical harm to a child. This is the moment when they realized that they would spend the rest of their lives behind bars. They were both found guilty and required to provide a DNA sample upon arrest. Eddie Devine. The case of Eddie Devine, who was sentenced to 130 years in prison for armed robbery, kidnapping, carjacking, and sexual battery, highlights the serious consequences of violent crimes. Eddie and his accomplice Remy Harvey were accused of committing multiple heinous acts, including assaulting a woman with an ice pick and raping her. Such acts of violence not only cause physical harm to the victim, but can also have long-lasting psychological effects. The severity of Eddie's sentence reflects the justice system's commitment to holding individuals accountable for their actions, particularly when it comes to violent crimes. The sentence also serves as a deterrent to others who may consider committing similar crimes, as it sends a clear message that such behavior will not be tolerated. The King Brothers. The case of the King brothers, Derek and Alex, made headlines for their shocking and gruesome act of murdering their own father, Terry King, with a baseball bat and setting their home on fire. The brothers were just 14 and 13 years old at the time of the crime, respectively, and their sentencing to state prison became a topic of intense debate and scrutiny. After a year-long legal battle, the King brothers were ultimately sentenced to 8 and 7 years in prison, respectively, with credit for the time they spent in jail. This decision was made after an unprecedented attempt at mediation by Pensacola attorney Bill Eatons, who negotiated an agreement between the prosecution and defense teams that allowed the boys to plead guilty to lesser charges of third-degree murder and arson in exchange for a truthful account of their father's death. Devin Erickson, a former student at STEM School Highlands Ranch, to life in prison without parole for his role in the 2019 shooting that took the life of one teenager and injured 8 others. Erickson, now 20, was convicted of 46 charges, including first-degree murder in the passing of Kendra Castillo, an 18-year-old senior hailed as a hero for trying to stop the attack on a classroom. Along with fellow student Alec McKinney, Erickson entered a classroom of students sitting in the dark as they watched a movie at the end of their senior year. The two entered through separate doors to maximize the number of students they could fatally harm. McKinney told investigators that he planned the attack for weeks and intended to target classmates who repeatedly mocked him because he was transgender. Despite this, Erickson was also held responsible for the deadly act, with Judge Teresa Michelle Slade adding hundreds of years of prison time to Erickson's life sentence for multiple charge and counts. During the hearing, survivors shared their pain, trauma, and disruption to their lives. Judge Slade addressed Erickson directly, stating that he had shown no remorse and had failed to help a devastated community understand his actions. Erickson displayed virtually no emotion throughout the hearing, leaving a gaping hole for communities seeking at least some sense of closure. While McKinney, who was 16 at the time of the shooting, was also sentenced to life in prison, he would become eligible for parole after about 20 years under a program for juvenile offenders. Judge Slade recounted how the shooting had devastated not only those at the school and their families, but untold numbers of people beyond the suburban community where the school is located. She said, "I find that these 2 pieces of evidence are fake, that they are illegitimate, and he's guilty of everything." Erickson never tried to explain his actions, leaving many questions unanswered. His voice broke when the judge asked if he wanted to speak, but he declined. Judge Slade concluded, "I don't think there's anything I can say to you, Mr. Erickson, that would make any difference." Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next one.